Lebanon and in Yemen. The reason that they're still not in the level of the Houthis in Yemen, which they are the one that provide the drones, the cruise missiles, the long-range missiles, are us. That's the only reason. The military activity in Syria. I will try to explain about it.
Okay.
Let's take a look here.
So that's interesting. Just 1 second. Let's go back to the Houthis. So there's been a lot of, there was initially, not that there's been, but there was initially a lot of speculation as to who actually bombed the tankers in Saudi Arabia. So who have you assessed that bombed? Was it a proxy?
Always think about
was it a proxy?
That's a rule in Iran.
Or was it Iran? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rule in Iran that if they fight against the Western world and sometimes even in the Middle East, they mostly use proxies. Why? Because they are Persians, and if you can use Arab blood, much better.
As I see.
That's the way. That's the rationale. The idea is eventually of Ali Khamenei to export the revolution, to be the supreme leader of the entire Islam. And therefore, it's not something that only the Iranians need to do. And especially now, when the economic problem in Iran, and I can say that there were economic problem in Iran also before US opposed the sanctions, before November last year. It's true that under a year of sanctions and the state budget reduced from $104 billion a year to 47.5. So I can't say that most of the people there starve, but they definitely have problems. The biggest agriculture area in Iran is Isfahan, and Isfahan, people have left there without water. Part of it because of the droughts that they have, but part of it because of the fact that the government was more busy exporting the revolution than taking care of the infrastructures there in Isfahan. And the people of Isfahan know exactly what all that money that was given to Iran, more than $100 billion on July 2015, as part of the agreements of the nuclear agreement, the JCPOA, they know exactly where this money spent. $17 billion a year on exporting the revolution. So, but also before, which means that this is a problem that has no connection to the economic sanctions. It can increase as a result of that. But the problem in Isfahan started a long time before that. That's eventually the priority of the Iranian regime, which is not necessarily parallel to the priority of the people that live in Iran. In the Middle East, and Iran is very exceptional, as a result of the Arab Spring, many of the dictators have to consider the street. I heard someone that call it streetocratia. Because the street today turned much more significant, and if a leader won't consider what the street want, he will have a problem. Once the dictatorship was ultimate, and today the situation changed. One of the countries that managed to bring the Arab Spring to skip over almost was Jordan.
Yes.
And why is that? They're also divided among the different tribes over there. It's less ethnicity, it's less religion. Even though there are 60% Palestinians that have one entrance, and the Hashemite, those are the Bedouins that control it, the king is an Hashemite. And one of his legitimacies to control the country is the fact that he's the 41 descendants to Muhammad. And therefore people say, okay, he's from the family of the Prophet. The Prophet never made a mistake. He had a direct connection to Allah. And this guy probably knows what he's doing. On the other hand, the riots got there into Jordan, and he saw people protesting, and he listened. He wanted to understand what those guys want. And they wanted to change the system of the monarchy in Jordan, and they demanded to have their opinion to be heard by the regime. And therefore he said, you know what? Okay, I will change the structure of the parliament. He responded immediately. And the parliament that once was a proxy, and most of the people there were selected one by one by the king, and now people can elect those members of parliament. Not necessarily good for Israel, because we have now free Islamic parties in the parliament of Jordan. But eventually it end, or now when people there demanding to elect the prime minister instead of the king that's doing that,
Oh yeah.
he's starting to think and said, we might do it. First of all, he fired the old prime minister and appointed in a new one. And I think that that's the main reason that all along the Arab Spring, one person got killed in Jordan. And the country, it's the most stable Arab country. Once in Syria, 700,000 people got killed, 6.5 million refugees, 6 million displaced, and it's not the end.
Wow.
And I will try to explain how this war in Syria began, and you will see that the president in Syria done just the opposite than Abdullah II in Jordan did. So today, this is crucial to understand what the street asks, and to try to work with that.
So Abdallah, if he was to go with a structure, with a parliamentary type structure, then you're looking at something like in the UK with a just an acting external, king kind of monarchy structure. So how could he structure that where he's still pulling the strings in a very strong way?
In Jordan?
Yeah.
How are we doing that?
How would he do it? How could he do it?
No, he can still do it, and I think that people there understand that democracy is not necessarily for them, and they need a strong leader. But they also need a leader. I think that the main problem in the Middle East, when I ask people why they started to protest, I ask Syrians because I work with them, and I ask means what brought someone that lived 100 years under dictatorship, whether that was Syria or something different, but since the British and the French got here, created national states, people lived under dictatorship. That's the Middle East. We're the only democracy. And suddenly, after 100 years, those people decided, we want to change that. We want a pressure for a change. What brought to it?
iPhone.
They knew that they will pay price. iPhone? That was a tool.
The internet.
And Facebook and Twitter definitely ended because you get more confident once you know that you are not the only.
Yes, exactly.
But what brought the first to do it? And when I asked them, and they said nothing, we had nothing to lose, I realized that no one liked to live under dictatorship.
Yeah.
I experienced that in Syria. They don't like the regime. But Syrians are people that will say, you know what, Yemen's Assad is not the best, but every Muslim could get to the mosque freely and eat halal, kosher food. Good enough for us. We couldn't ask for more. But then someone that getting to 55 years old, and he still struggle on a daily basis to put bread on the table. And he understand that the president and his tribe lives in a very different way. And he look to his family and understand that his son live in a very similar way. And his grandson also gonna live like that. And his grandson. And that's when they lost their hope.
Wow.
Which means the demand and expectations of the public wasn't even close to what the dictatorship could give. And none of the countries from Gibraltar Strait in the west to the Pakistani-Indian border in the east managed to provide their people bread, work, or hope for the children.
Isn't that something?
And that's the main
Seriously.
reason, or call it a trigger, because there were many other struggles in the background that eventually brought them to the street. But if before that they used to hate the other tribe that live in the next region, or the fact that they're run by Shiites but they are Sunnis, or the fact that those are Kurds and we are Arabs, that's something that they could live with. When it's erupted, so many things that like covered by something, which was the dictatorship, all those years, suddenly when the cover removed, it was all on the surface. And therefore, those struggles, which part of them are ancient, I can't really call history. Because it's true that it started then, 1400 years ago or 2000 years ago, but it turned to be very, very relevant today. And there are things here that are unique for the Middle East, that we cannot compare with no other area in the world. And therefore, I work today a lot with politicians, and the idea is, and mostly American politicians, and the idea is eventually bring them to understand the culture in the Middle East. Before you came, I had policy consultants from Washington, and when we done kind of a tour instead of a lecture, so I could talk about all kind of different things. But then when we got to the lecture, suddenly because of schedule issues, the security told me, okay, you have 20 minutes for all of it. Wow. When usually I give them an hour and a half.
Wow.
And then there's the spokesman of the IDF there, and he said, okay, we have 20 minutes, so we can't talk about history, nothing like that. We have to get who's the guys on the other side of the fence and what Israel do against it. And I said, this is something that problematic, because I can that's like intelligence work. That's what I do in the intelligence. But to say that they will get with something that will bring them to make the decisions different, no. They will understand the reality today better. It can change next week, but that's it. So sometimes something like that happen, and I said, well, without teaching the history of the Middle East, we missed that delegation. And they will come back to Washington, and decisions will base on more intuition than the rational.
Wow.
But with most of the groups, tomorrow we have women Congress members. All of them women.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
We'll see how it works.
Should be interesting.
Not sure how many of them supposed to come. I think that's something like at least 10.
You getting AOC?
And,
Is AOC coming? Alejandro
I can-
Cortez, the
I
one
can
that.
look on the bio. Let's see.
Let's see, the one that's. Let's see who's coming.
We don't want him here.
No, we don't. Where'd they come from?
No, I don't think that she come.
I don't know. I wouldn't think she would. These probably are Republican Congress.
No, they usually
No?
mixing. What, they didn't send the bio?
Are they coming in with APEC or?
Yeah, it's part of the APEC.
Okay.
Is Sabrina coming? Do you know Sabrina with APAC?
I'm not sure. Show me the picture and I will know, but I bet with
I
names.
I don't have a picture of her with me. She brings a lot of people over here. She's real high up in APAC.
Debbie Westerman.
No way. That's my congresswoman in Florida.
Yeah, from Florida.
That's the one I've been contemplating for a year, running against in
Against.
Congress. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
really.
Angie Craig from Minnesota.
Okay, oh, that's two.
James Hera from Washington.
Oh,
Susie
really?
Lee from Nevada.
Okay.
Martha Robin from Alabama.
Okay.
Mickey Sherrill from New Jersey.
Oh, Mickey Sherrill. Okay.
Bonnie Weston Coleman from New Jersey also.
New Jersey.
Okay, so you've got a pretty,
Wow.
you've got a pretty
So they
progressive
probably, and the
side.
rest I'm assuming the delegations means they're
Yeah.
chief of staff.
Yeah, these are definitely progressive left. Several
Yeah?
of them. So your
All
job is
progressive?
you're on. You're on.
You're on.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, yes.
Yeah, they made it challenging.
Oh,
Let's see if they're voting
yes.
to me.
let me
You're,
tell
you're
you.
gonna get your money's
It's
worth.
not that he's
Money's worth.
Well, they expected me to to search and to know about each of them. That I need to be gentle with them. I understand.